morning, good afternoon, greetings, salutations. Welcome to the Library Lowdown. As always, this is the video where you find out the lowdown on what's happening at the library. And we have some super exciting things. Giddy. I am Theri Ray. I am the current interim director at the library. This is my friend Francie.
Okay.
Francie is one of our programmers. Puts together programs and cool stuff happening at the library, so that's super cool. Francie does a great job, and we want to talk about some stuff that's coming up. Super important Saturday, this Saturday, the Enid Author Fest.
Yes.
I love the Author Fest. So it is Oklahoma authors. We have some really, really great authors coming this time. We always have great authors, but there will be authors. You get to meet them. You get to buy their books, maybe have books signed. I am that book nerd that loves signed books, like signed by the authors. It's super cool. And I wish I had the list with me, but I did not bring that today. It is going to be super cool, though. There's lots of great authors, and folks should come and check that out on Saturday. That is from 1 to 5.
It's my first one, so I'm super, super excited to be a part of it. I'm super excited to see all of the great local author talent that we have here in Enid, and maybe get introduced to some new books that I haven't tried before.
Oh, yes. Awesome. Yeah, and there will be authors from all over Oklahoma. So there's a gentleman who's scheduled to come from Stillwater, and I'm super excited because I would love to have him talk at our library. And so being able to make those connections and meet people is super cool. But yeah, there's lots of great authors. So it's always a good time for Author Fest. The other thing that is finishing up in April is National Poetry Month. Super excited about that. You can still submit poems through the end of the month. But our children's librarian, Susan, has wonderful little templates for young folks on a various and sundry types of poems. And they did a craft that was sort of like just picking words, and super cool. And those will be included in the book. So
Great.
That's super cool. Are you going to write something?
Ooh, I haven't tried my hand at poetry in quite some time, but I might see if I can get those gears turning again.
You know,
to turn something in.
Little acrostic.
I could write a haiku.
Yeah. Haiku is fun with haiku. They're great. They're, like 3 little lines. So that's super fun and exciting. And I love the idea that we are putting together books with things written by members of our community. I mean, how cool is it that you can go to the library and find a book with your writing on the library shelf?
It's a great opportunity for young authors to be published, actually. They can hold their creation in an actual book and a physical copy, which is so incredibly cool for the community here and for the young people that are trying to grow their creative skills.
Right. And when we say young, we mean physically young.
Yes.
But we also mean people who are young at it, like you've just started trying this, or you've been trying it but you haven't been published yet. And there's a thing about, I don't feel like I'm a real writer until I've been published. And that holding your book or the book that contains your writing is such a cool feeling. So yes, people should do that. And I believe that people who are included in the book get a copy of the book, which
I believe that is true.
I mean,
yes.
that's how we've always done it at the library, and I see no reason to not do it that way as well. So that is super cool. I'm very excited about that. What else do we have? It is almost the end of April, so we have all of our regular programming going on at the library, but book clubs. Book clubs are, I feel like book clubs are a staple of the library. Of all the programming that we do, and we do great programming, lots of great programming, book clubs are one that we absolutely should be doing, right? For the library.
I think it's the essence of the library. You're gathering the community to talk about a book that you've all shared an experience with, and showing your opinions and expressing your feelings about how you read that book and what you interpreted to be true.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that is sort of then hearing what other people thought and being able to have that conversation, because we all get something different from the book. And I don't know if you've ever read the same book twice.
Yes.
But like if you read a book when you were young and then you read it again as an adult, it's a
completely different
right,
experience.
Right. It's like
when you have life under your belt that you're equating to these experiences you're reading about, I feel like it makes it a lot, like you interpret it just so much differently because of the experience that you have.
Yeah, right. You know, and it's like you're at a different point in your life, in your journey, whatever that journey is, and so you experience the book from where you are now. And that doesn't mean that you missed something or like you interpreted it wrong when you were young or whatever. You were a different person then, and so now you're experiencing it like again for the first time, which is super cool. I don't reread a whole lot of books, but there are a few that I do.
That is where we differ.
Yes.
I am a constant rereader, and I have many books from my childhood that I had such incredible experiences with as a child. I reread them as an adult, and it gives me nostalgia, but also I see new things that I don't remember being there when I was a kid, and I can understand some of the emotions of the situations more because I've personally experienced them now as a grown-up.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 23. I'm not that much of a grown-up, but with the experience I do have,
Yes,
I can relate to those.
That's it. I'm laughing because I remember many years ago, you know, being in my early 20s thinking, I'm grown now. And then I remember this very clear moment, and I had just pulled up at work, and I was in my early 30s, and I had this, I'm really an adult now. Like, I thought I was grown, but now I'm really an adult. And it was just this weird moment. But I think it's important to note, too, as we're talking about, like, reading things at different ages, like this one, Number of the Stars, is our elementary book club book. And I think that people in their 20s could absolutely get something out of this book. And I think
Definitely.
people in their late 40s could also get something out of this book. And so just because it is written at a level that can be understood by children doesn't mean that it's not a book for grown-ups to read also. And so what we have here is all youth book club books. There is an adult book club called The Operator that is going to take place in May. That one's run by Miss Margot, and it is available in a digital format. So you can go to Hoopla and get that, and you can get it as an ebook where you read on, you know, your e-reader or your computer or whatever, or you can get it as an audiobook. Huge fan of audiobooks. I love
audiobooks.
Right?
Love audiobooks.
Right. Like I can get all the chores done while
yeah.
I'm listening to a book, and yeah, so that's fantastic. That one, I'm interested in this premise, even though I'm not sure it's actually the kind that I would normally read. It's a historical fiction. It's called The Operator, and it is about a lady who is a telephone operator. Now, back in the day, there used to be somebody, and it was generally a woman, that sat with a headphones on, and they literally made the connections for the phone lines.
That's so wild to me to think about that.
So the operator would be like, "Hi, how can I connect you?" And they would be like, "I need this number," and so you would plug this thing in, and they could listen in. And I believe that is what happens in the story. It starts off, she's listening in. And sometimes when you listen in on other folks' conversations, you hear things that you shouldn't hear or maybe would rather you didn't hear. And maybe she hears a conversation about herself. Right?
Ooh, the intrigue.
Ooh, the intrigue. And then the book goes on from there. Like, how would you...
very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does. And I mean, I feel like it's not normally my kind of book, but it might be interesting. And I think it's important that from time to time we stretch outside. What is my normal read? Like I like fantasy and adventure, but every once in a while I should read, historical fiction, or some nonfiction is good from time to time too. You learn a little something, but you can learn.
I haven't read a nonfiction book in a very, very, very long time. But I'm fairly stuck in this contemporary romance niche that I continually go back to. So
I love it, and it's not my genre at all. But I love talking to folks like you who love it so much, and like your whole face lights up as you talk. That's so great. That's one of the things that I love about a library is that there are books for me who likes science fiction and adventure, and bring me the Terry Pratchett's and the Neil Gaimans of the world, and I love that stuff and the world building, and but there's also books for you,
right,
which is fantastic. So that's super cool. I love that. So Number of the Stars is set in World War II, about a young girl who is being hidden to keep her safe from the Nazis. She's apparently Danish. The Danish resistance smuggles almost the entire population of Denmark, nearly 7,000 people across to Sweden. But it is about the heroism of an entire nation. Reminds us that there was pride and human decency in the world, even during a time of terror and war. And I think that's one of the things. This is it's a fiction book, but historical fiction. But I think that's one of the things that fiction can remind us is we are not alone in whatever we're going through, and that there is goodness and love in the world, even when it seems to be outnumbered by something else. So I'm excited I might read this one. I don't know that I'll go to the book club, but kids are invited to pick up their copy and read and then come and discuss. Then there is a teen book club that is an all-inclusive book club. It's called Homo Sapiens United, and it tries to include everybody in the representation of the book. Of course, everybody is welcome at all the book clubs. Like, we are inclusive about who gets to come. But sometimes we don't see everybody in the book. And so the Homo Sapiens United struggles to, or works to, make sure that we see everybody. This one is called Your Welcome Universe. It is about a girl who is deaf. And she starts off, and at the beginning of the book, she goes to an all-deaf school, which, is super helpful, right? It's nice when we can easily communicate, like we all speak the same language. And in case of the deaf community, it is a sign language. But it's communicating, and, people know, all the social rules about how you do that. Then she gets kicked out because she's an artist, and she does graffiti. And somebody writes a slur about her friend on a wall. So in defense of her friend, she goes and covers it up with beautiful art. But it's a place she did not have permission to put her art, and so she's in trouble for graffiti and, that sort of thing. So she gets kicked out, and now she has to go to the public school that is a hearing school. And the struggle of how do you do this, and how do you have these conversations, and how do you navigate that when you don't speak the same language as everybody else. And one of the things that really stuck out to me in this one, she has an interpreter who interprets, what teachers are saying and everything. And she finds that the teachers, instead of talking to her, are talking to the interpreter. And as much as people try to redirect them, they just keep doing it. I learned a lot reading this book about what it's like to be considered different, and how do we as a community then help people not feel different, because we're all different, right? I mean, we all have our uniqueness, and we should all be accepted and included in the fabric of society, whether it's I don't hear well, I don't speak well, I like romance, whatever.
Everybody deserves their space.
Right. Everybody deserves their space, and nobody deserves to feel othered. Right. And so I really like this book for a view into a world that I'm not a part of. And that thought-provoking, how do we make sure that we include people?
I think that's one of the best things about reading books from authors that have different life situations, because
Absolutely.
you can learn so much about how people experience the world when it's not through your specific lens.
Right.
And you can learn the things that you're doing that might be unintentionally othering somebody because of the behaviors that you've just grown up with.
Right.
So learning and exploring and understanding how you impact the society around you by absorbing so much content from people that are different is incredibly important.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget that everybody does not view the world the way we do. And like, we have a tendency as humans to assume that people know the things that we know, and that people think the way that we think, and people experienced what we did. And that's just not true.
Right.
And so being able to broaden your horizons by reading a book by or about somebody different than you is, it's a way to travel through somebody else's experiences in a way that is ultimately safe.
Right. Everyone is their own main character in their own story.
True story. And everybody is the hero of their own
Yes,
story.
correct.
That's another thing that I've come to realize, is that everybody is the hero of their own story. And I believe nobody wakes up trying to be the villain.
Right.
Nobody wants to be the villain, but being able to learn from other people's perspectives is just so powerful. Now, we have another one that
Yes, we
I'm
do.
not familiar with, Call Down the Hawk.
Yes, so this is a book, it's called Call Down the Hawk. This is the book that we are going to be doing for the Teen and Tween Book Club this month. So the Teen and Tween Book Club is open for anybody from the ages of 11 to 18, but you can also participate in it for, if this is a book that you were really interested in and you want to read it, please, we would love to discuss it with you. We're meeting at the end of this month. And Call Down the Hawk is by Maggie Stiefvater. She is a New York bestselling author. Her other stories that she has are fantastic. And this is the first in a trilogy called the Dreamers Trilogy. Ooh. And so this book specifically is about 3 characters. Their names are Ronan Lynch, Jordan Hennessy, and Carmen Farouk Lane. And this is a fantasy setting.
Okay, so now you're talking my language. Now you're talking my language.
Where there are people that are dreamers and there are people that are dreamed. And so dreamers have the ability to bring into their own reality the things that exist within their dreams.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And people that are dreamed cannot live their own lives without the person that dreamed them. So they are created from the reality of dreamers. And if the dreamer no longer lives, then the person who is dreamed also no longer lives. So in this story, there is a group of people that are run by the government that are trying to rid the world of dreamers, because one of them is going to cause a fire that ends the world.
Oh.
And so Carmen Farouk Lane is a hunter, and she is hunting down dreamers for this government group to ensure that the world doesn't end.
I mean, we don't want the world to end.
Right.
But also, we're hunting down people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's a whole dilemma to to talk about, maybe. I mean, depending on how people see that. That's.
And Ronan Lynch and Jordan Hennessy are both dreamers, and Ronan can pull both curiosities and catastrophes out of his dreams and into his compromised reality. Jordan Hennessy is a thief. The closer she comes to the dream object she is after, the more inextricably she becomes tied to it. So it is an adventure book. It is a fantasy that, with all fantasy novels, there's some kind of rhetoric you have to put in your head, like, okay, this is what this means, and you have to kind of learn the language of what it means.
Sure.
But it also involves ley lines, and you have to be close enough to the place where you can feel the energy of this dream for dreamers. If you are too far away, then there are consequences that come from being too far away from the place where your energy is tied to. So it's an incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, just as somebody
premise.
who reads like magic and fantasy, you start talking about ley lines. This is my vocabulary, right?
Right.
Like I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm now super interested in that one.
It was a Sequoia winner in 2021. And so the Sequoia books, it was a Sequoia Teen winner. So young adult fiction, which is another one of my absolute favorite genres. I don't care how old I get, I will always read young adult fiction books. They're fast-paced and fun, and the energy is, you almost can't replace it with.
Right.
I also obviously read contemporary romance, but I will always come back to a young adult fiction book for the pacing and the adventure and it just feels like it needs to happen right away.
Which really reminds me of like being a teenager.
Yes,
right.
Definitely.
And I'm so. I like the YA, the young adult fiction, more than I thought I would. When I was growing up, and I don't know if there just wasn't YA fiction or if somehow or another I just skipped over it, but I went from like The Mouse and the Motorcycle to adult books. I read Gorky Park when I was young, so I'm super excited about YA fiction. I didn't even know it was out there really until I started working on, working with kids and working in libraries and, working in a middle school. And I was like, this is kind of cool,
Yeah. I think it's a genre that's definitely blossomed in the last probably decade.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, I devoured any book that was put in front of me. And so when I got to middle school, that was when The Hunger Games was huge. It was when Divergent was coming out, Percy Jackson, which is more middle grade, but it's like flows into a young adult fiction series. Harry Potter starts out as middle grade, also flows into young adult fiction. Right. And so I think over the course of those books becoming so popular, it just exploded this genre of, this is what young people want to read, and this is what people want to read.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter how old you are.
Right.
You can definitely enjoy a young adult fiction novel.
Absolutely.
And my mother loves young adult fiction novels.
That's fantastic.
So we recommend books to each other all the time because we can share the love for the genre.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much going on in your teen years, right? Like as you're trying to decide, who am I and where do I fit in the world and what do I want to do? And people keep asking these big questions, like, what are you going to do with your life? And you're like, I don't know. I'm, 16. I'm trying to figure out how to get like a first job. Right. I don't want to like figure out my whole plan yet. What if I'm wrong? I'm like, there's so much going on, and it really comes out in the YA fiction that there's so many great authors that remember being a teen and can write to that.
They can articulate that experience. Yeah. When I was 16, it was the most important thing in the world for me to read about something, and I could relate to it so much. Yeah. And seeing that experience and reading about someone my age going through that was incredibly important to me. And there's so many diverse themes that young adult fiction can explore now that there's books for everybody going through any situation. And there's fantasy books for escapism, which is also important.
And sometimes in the fantasy books and in the fiction books, that are like, they're out there, right? Like dreamers but there's also truth in there. Yes. That helps us sort of navigate all of that. There's a line from a song, and the singer is talking about, like feeling alone, and she says, "You won't be alone. Well, you will, but you won't, because a girl thought it too, in a book that the library bought." And I'm just like, the power of that we can put books on the shelf to help people not feel so alone. Like that's why we're here.
It's my favorite part of working at the library. Yeah, it's why I wanted to.
Yeah,
Sorry, could you...
Excuse me. You are on Do Not Disturb. That should not have happened.
Technology, that's fantastic.
You want to take that again?
No, I think it'll work out. Thanks for sticking with us. All right. The technology is great. There's so much great stuff happening at the library. I'm so excited about the book clubs and the discussions and the opportunity for, outlet, and It's so great. Story times are great.
Yes.
The mini mads, like we're going to do some sciencey stuff. They made buttons on Monday. The button maker is still in the makerspace. Like folks could come and make their own buttons.
There's so much programming. There's so many things going on at the library.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely fantastic. The programmers that we have there, not just speaking for myself, but speaking for everybody that I work with, are so dedicated to making sure that there's something for everybody.
Yes. I love that whole team thing. We have a wonderful team of programmers. We have a wonderful team that is our circulation team. Like, there's so many little teams within the library, and then the fact that we are collectively a team as well. I love that. I love it so much. We hope that you love it. We hope that you will come to the library and find something wonderful there. So come to the library. We can't wait to see you there, and have a great week.